A central question in anthropology is, what makes us human? And in biological anthropology, we attempt to answer that question by considering humans within the broad context of all biological organisms, so that we can appreciate how humans, like all living things, are subject to the same natural, biological, and genetic processes. And in fact, it's because of our genes that we're uniquely human. So the purpose of this presentation is to give you a preview of some of the topics and issues that we'll be exploring in more depth in this class by way of a quiz that will also demonstrate that you already know quite a bit about genetics. So, to begin, question 1. Which of these movie titles contain the letters of the chemical basis of the DNA molecule? Is it A, The Island, B, Gattaca, C, X-Men, or D, Ex Machina? The correct answer is B, Gattaca. A, T, C, and G. These are the letters of the genetic alphabet that spell out the code for each and every living thing. And our ability to read that code has also given us the ability to manipulate it. So one of the things that all of these movies have in common is that they deal in some way with genetic engineering or bioengineering. For example, in The Island, which I'll ask you to watch as part of an assignment for the class, it's all about human cloning. Gattaca deals with the creation of a genetic elite by designing babies so that they have the traits and characteristics that we select for them. X-Men is about mutations, which are a powerful evolutionary force. And Ex Machina deals with the development of learning machines or artificial intelligence that could learn to outsmart us. Another thing that all of these movies have in common is that they're science fiction. But as you'll see after watching The Island, there's a lot more science than fiction going on here. And so as these new technologies are giving us this ability to manipulate the genetic code, it's going to cause us as a society to step back and critically pause and think about the direction of our future and the future of humanity. But back to the genetics. A, T, C, and G, the letters of the genetic code. Just like we arrange letters of the alphabet to form meaningful words, the DNA molecule arranges these chemical bases to spell out the proteins that give us all of our physical characteristics. And every time a cell divides and replicates in our body, which is constantly happening through the process of mitosis, all of that genetic code and those billions of letters that spell out that living thing have to be copied into each and every cell. And inevitably, during that copying process, some mistakes might get made. Think of it like when you're texting and you accidentally hit a different key instead of the one you intended, or perhaps you leave a letter out. Anytime you make a little mistake like that, or an error in that process, in genetic terms, we call that a mutation. So next question. Can mutations be A, harmful, B, beneficial, C, neutral, or D, all of these? The answer is all of these. And let me give you an example for each one. An example of a harmful mutation is the one associated with the BRCA1 or breast cancer gene, where in this case, a single letter was deleted, which caused the tumor-suppressing function of the gene that contained that letter to be switched off or deactivated, and therefore allowed cancerous cells to grow unchecked into this deadly form of cancer. An example of a beneficial mutation is that associated with lactase persistence, where in this case, one letter got switched around and enabled people to digest lactose or the sugars in milk into adulthood, which came in very handy when people began to practice pastoralism or the keeping of herd animals for the production of dairy, milk, and dairy products. But the vast majority of mutations can have no effect on an organism at all, at least in the beginning. But what happens with these mutations that build up in the DNA molecule is that they provide a brand new source of variation for natural selection to act on. And since our environment is always changing, this provides opportunities for adaptation and for change in changing environments. In fact, genetic research is revealing that our genes actually interact with the environment and are influenced by external inputs. And this provides even greater genetic variation. So the next question is, which of the following can influence how your genes function? Is it A, diet, B, exercise and activity level, C, exposure to toxins, D, stress, or E, all of these? The answer is E. And in fact, epigenetic research is showing how our genes react to our behavior and our experiences and the environment in which we live. And what they found is that just about everything that we eat, do, breathe, and think can affect how our genes behave or function in some way, whether bad or good. Our genes are a lot more dynamic and flexible and responsive to external influences than we realized. And this is an important insight into the process of evolution, but also has important implications for human health, development, and even social relationships. So this field of epigenetics is really helping us to understand that we have a measure of control over our genes. And if we take care of our genes will take care of us. On to a slightly different but related topic, primates. To which species of ape are humans most closely related? Is it A, the orangutan, B, the gorilla, C, the chimpanzee, or D, the gibbon? The answer is C, chimpanzees. And you probably might be surprised to know that we share 99% of our genes in common with chimpanzees. So that's a very big 1% difference because most of us don't act or look like a chimpanzee. And it's in that 1% that we're really starting to uncover the important differences and variations that exist that set us apart from our nearest primate relatives, including the activation of a particular set of genes in humans that distinguish them from chimps. So both chimpanzees and humans have this gene called FOXP2, which is related to speech and language. Chimps have it and humans have it, but it's activated in humans and not in chimpanzees. So could some mutation or some epigenetic influence have caused this gene to switch on in humans and not in chimpanzees? Well, hopefully, as genetic research continues, we'll be able to answer these types of questions. And the more that we learn about these variations, the more we are rethinking what we thought we knew about how this may have affected key evolutionary turning points in hominid evolution, which brings us to our next question. Which of these developments came first in human evolution? Is it A, the production of stone tools, B, upright walking or bipedalism, C, meat eating, or D, big brains? The answer is B, upright walking or bipedalism. In fact, this is the defining feature of the hominid lineage. There's really not much else in terms of behavior and appearance that separated our earliest ancestors from other primates. And this form of locomotion provided an adaptive flexibility in dramatically changing environments. But hominids also adapted to these changes culturally. Around 2.5 million years ago, when stone tools appear, this is no coincidence that hominid brains begin to grow as well. So this development of the production of stone tools triggers a pattern of biocultural evolution that sets our ancestors literally on the path to humanity. In fact, there's some exciting experimental research that is being done by archaeologists and neurobiologists who are trying to put the pieces of our evolutionary past together. And they're doing this through brain imagery techniques that are taking scans of archaeology students who are producing stone tools similar to those used by and produced by our earliest ancestors, and seeing in these brain scans what regions of the brain are being activated or stimulated during this process. And what they found is that there are important regions in the brain that are related to higher level cognition, and particularly in the Broca's region of the brain, which is in that kind of purplish section there in the illustration, that are related to language. So we see this kind of positive biofeedback loop occurring with the introduction of this important evolutionary innovation, stone tools. This allowed our earliest ancestors to obtain more animal protein or meat into their diet, which fueled their brain growth because the brain is an energy expensive organ, which in turn allowed them to produce more sophisticated tools, which enabled them to acquire even more meat, which fueled their brain growth, and again, important regions of the brain, which would lead to more sophisticated tools like the use of fire and language, and so on. As we journey into our evolutionary past, you'll learn in this class that our human story is one of diversity, variation, and change. And although it begins with our genes, as anthropologist Ian Tattersall points out, nothing of what we are today would have been possible in the absence of any aspect of our unique history, which means that humans are shaped by biology and culture. And this truly does set us apart from all other living things. So to return to the question that we began with, what makes us human? This biocultural evolution truly does make us unique. But I would also add that what makes us human is our need for connection, deep and meaningful connection, because every human has the desire to be seen, to be acknowledged, to be valued and cared for, to feel connected to other humans. And it's our ability to cooperate and care for one another and to lift each other up that we have become so successful as a species. I would also add that what makes us human is not just our capacity for language, but our need for language. That helps us to stay in connection to one another. It's the vehicle through which we express our emotions, our thoughts, our feelings, our hopes, our plans. It's through language that we tell not just our collective human story, but also our own individual stories. Because every person you meet, every single individual you encounter in your life has a story. Whether it's your sibling, your coworker, your parents, your classmate, your anthropology instructor. Everyone's got a story. And if we spent more time sharing our stories with one another and listening to each other's stories, perhaps we would begin to recognize ourselves in each other. Because our common language is our humanity. And this is the most important lesson from anthropology.